Welcome to Saudi Arabia, a kingdom of rich culture and heritage, boasting a long coastline and an untouched nature. Ruled by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, also known as MBS, the architect behind Saudi Arabia's grand spectacle of reforms. Under his Vision 2030, he vowed to transform the country into a global investment powerhouse and to build a thriving country in which all citizens can fulfill their dreams, hopes, and ambitions. Record amounts of money are exchanging hands for opulent projects and deals. Foreign investors, politicians, and celebrities are all welcomed as long as they spread the Saudi image of glitz and glamour. So why have people like Lujain and Muhammad risked their lives to fight for rights and freedoms? MBS came to power in 2017. 1 year later, as he planned new futuristic cities, he faced international condemnation and sanctions for the brutal assassination of the journalist and critic Jamal Khashoggi. While some positive reforms were introduced, like lifting the infamous driving ban on women and allowing them into football stadiums, peaceful activists were arrested, tortured, and sentenced to prison on absurd charges, including the very women who campaigned for the right to drive. And things are not improving much. In fact, MBS will silence anyone who even shows support for issues like women's rights. Salma al-Shihab was arrested and sentenced to 27 years in prison just for tweeting in support of women's rights. Or Muhammad al-Ghamdi, who had a total of just 10 followers on Twitter, was sentenced to death in July 2023 for his posts. And while MBS promised to decrease the use of the death penalty, in 2022, Saudi Arabia recorded 196 executions, the highest number in 30 years.
Despite the earlier condemnations for Khashoggi's murder in 2018, world leaders are rolling out the red carpet for MBS, exporting billions of dollars worth of weapons to the kingdom, and conveniently brushing Saudi Arabia's atrocious human rights record under the rug. As Amnesty International's researcher monitoring trends of abuses and repression, I've documented an alarming escalation in the Saudi authorities' repression of human rights. The Saudi authorities are quashing any kind of criticism, no matter how innocuous, targeting even ordinary individuals and sentencing them to some of the longest prison terms we have ever documented for peaceful expression.
So, how is Saudi Arabia getting so much goodwill from the international community, when wearing, believing, and loving who you want in the country can get you in serious trouble, and human rights organizations like Amnesty International are banned? Because image is everything. MBS is one of the richest men in the world and is investing billions of dollars into a massive rebranding effort to hide the human rights abuses going on in the country. And it's working. Sports and entertainment celebrities are rushing to take advantage of Saudi Arabia's financial bounty.
Well, for me, it's a pleasure to be here.
And the Saudi Grand Prix is go!
If Sportswashing gonna increase my GDP by 1%, and then I will continue doing Sportswashing.
And that's not everything. Through the Public Investment Fund, MBS is securing deals all over the world, expanding his influence beyond Saudi's borders. Governments and companies should do their human rights due diligence before taking a slice of the pie. Today, at least 7 young men are at imminent risk of execution for alleged crimes committed when they were children as young as 12. Peaceful activists are locked up and sentenced to decades in prison and even to death after unfair trials. And a new law being considered could allow men to escape prosecution if they acted for honor reasons, including if they murdered their own wife or daughter. So what legislation is in place to determine crimes and punishments in Saudi Arabia?
Until this day, Saudi Arabia does not have a penal code. Instead, judges use their discretion and interpretation of Islamic law to determine what constitutes a crime and what the punishment should be. As you can imagine, this leads to very different sentences for people accused of similar crimes and allows the authorities to use the judiciary to settle political scores.
But then, in July 2022, a draft of the first country's penal code was leaked online.
Together with a Saudi lawyer, we analyzed the draft, and we can say that it is, in fact, a legal maze. Instead of protecting rights, the draft penal code entrenches existing rights violations. It is like a manifesto for repression that cements the death penalty as a primary punishment, criminalizes freedom of expression and bodily autonomy, and fails to protect women from violence. As it currently stands, the draft penal code includes problematic provisions that violate Saudi Arabia's international obligations.
And this is why the Saudi Arabia's image laundering, which includes sportswashing, matters. Because if everyone only sees the best football players landed in Saudi or the world's biggest LED light bulb, who will pressure the authorities to end their execution sprees and free Saudi voices like Salma al-Shihab and Muhammad al-Ghamdi?
Amnesty International has campaigned on the human rights situation in Saudi Arabia for decades, and we know the authorities are susceptible to international pressure. With billions sunk into their image laundering, authorities worry about damaging their reformist and progressive image internationally. While our pockets do not run as deep as the Saudi government, we do have our voices. It's time to break the silence, expose the dire human rights situation, and speak out loudly to demand reforms.
The illusion can only persist as long as the audience remains spellbound. Join Amnesty International and add your voice to those demanding human rights reforms.